Great. Well, I forgot to say at home, I hope you were joining in with that game as well, because of course you could do it across your lounge, and if not, then you can try it later. You can make your own red and green lights. Now, to understand what's going on when Jesus says, "I am the light of the world," we need to understand a word called context. Now, context is a really important thing. Context means what is going on at the time. Context is what is going on at the time when something was said. And we need to understand it to help us understand what Jesus is saying. So here's an example of context. I might say, who's hungry? And a few people put their hands up. Yeah, there we are. What about if I say this? Who's hungry? No one put their hand up that time, apart from my daughter, thank you. Because this is dog food. And actually, we do have a dog in it, don't we? So I haven't opened it to see if Willow put her hand up. But no one put their hand up. But if I actually had this here, actually had a bar of dairy milk, and I said, who's hungry? Then hands would go up. Exactly. Context. What is going on at the time you say something gives you more information about what you're saying. So if I say who's hungry when I'm holding up dog food, no one wants it. If I say who's hungry when I'm holding up chocolate, then hands start to go up. I forgot to buy a bar of chocolate, so I had to print one out. Sorry about that. Context, and in your children's orders of service, you've got pictures there, haven't you, of dog food and chocolate, and you can use that to help you remember that word, context. So what was happening at the time Jesus said, "I am the light of the world"? Well, what was going on is the festival of tabernacles, or the festival of booths, it's sometimes called in the Bible. Booths or tabernacles. And it's a festival that Jewish people celebrated then, and they still celebrate now. And a tabernacle was another word for a huge tent. In the Bible, it was the tent that the Jewish people used to set up every time they stopped in the desert when they were traveling after being rescued by God from slavery in Egypt. You might have seen the film Prince of Egypt. You may have even, I don't know, has it had any live audiences on stage? Yeah, I don't know whether it came out during the pandemic or just before, but there is a musical stage version as well. You may have tickets to go and see that, or you may see that one day. But you may have seen the film of Prince of Egypt, which is all about the Israelites and Moses and Egypt. And if you've seen that film, you'll remember the Israelites were slaves in Egypt, and they sing that great song, "Deliver Us." And then God sends Moses to do some magic signs to Pharaoh and convince Pharaoh to let his people go. And Pharaoh's magicians, one short, one tall, try and recreate the signs, and they sing that great song, "You're Playing with the Big Boys Now." And then finally the Israelites are released, and then they're chased, and then they're saved through the Red Sea, and they sing a reprise of "There Can Be Miracles." I'm not going to sing any of these songs. And then they end up in the desert. Now, none of the songs are in the Bible, but it's still a great read if you read the account in the Bible. And then the film finishes, and the Bible continues. The Jewish people are journeying in the desert, and God leads them. And at night, he leads them by creating a huge pillar of fire to light their way through the darkness as they journey to the promised land. And that is what the Feast of Booths, the Feast of Tabernacles, celebrates. It was an 8-day party. Hands up if you've had an 8-day birthday party. I wondered, some of you might have done, you know. Yeah, well, yeah, okay, some of you have, some 8-day parties going on there, yeah. It was an 8-day party in the city of Jerusalem, and people would travel for miles and miles. No lockdown restrictions at this time. People would travel for miles and miles to join in the celebration. And one part of the party was that they had these 4 huge pillars, 75 foot tall. Is anyone 75 foot tall here? Not quite. We wouldn't be able to get through the door, would we? 75 foot tall is huge. And they had 4 75 foot tall pillars with bowls on the top of them. And people would climb all the way up and fill those bowls with oil. And then at one point, the oil in the bowls was lit. And so it burned. So there was fire on the top of each of these pillars. And it was to remind the people of the fire that God, the pillar of fire that God led them through the darkness at night, through the wilderness. Can you imagine it? Jerusalem is built on a hill, and the temple would have been the highest point in the city. And these pillars would have shone out for miles and miles. People would have come to the celebration and not been able to get into the city, and so camped on the outskirts. But everyone who came would have been able to see this huge light shining out of the temple in Jerusalem, shining into the darkness, reminding people that God was with them and God was leading them. And it was while all of that was going on that Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Can you see how much difference context makes? I mean, I am the light of the world is a huge statement at any point. But Jesus was standing, we're told in John 8, in the temple courts. We're told at the start of the chapter he was standing in the temple courts. We have to assume that these huge pillars would have been there, would have been able to be seen with the lights on. And Jesus doesn't say, wow, look at that light. No, he says, I am the light of the world. He's making a huge statement there. Let's think about it more. Light does all sorts of things, doesn't it? We use light for lots of things. And there's space on your orders of service to kind of write or draw some things that we use light for. We use lights for all sorts of things. But here's a question. If you wanted to see something better, is it better to have light or not to have light? Hands up if you think to see something better, it's better to not have light. Hands up. Okay, hands down. Hands up if you think it's better to have light if you want to see something better. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of hands went up for that second one. Because if you're in a room and the light's off, you can't see anything. If the light's on, you can see something. And what about if you want to hide something? Is it better to have light or not to have light? Hands up if you think to hide something, it's better than not to have light. Hands up, quite a few hands. Yeah, okay, hands down. Hands up if you think to hide something, it's better to have light. Some hands up, because you can probably think about some ways in which actually hiding something, some things might be better in the light. But in the, on the whole, hiding in the dark is much more effective than hiding in the light. So light shows us things, it reveals things, and dark hides things. And this is one thing that Jesus is talking about. We said that if you want to hide something, that darkness is best. You don't want light. And that's sometimes how we feel. When we don't want people to know something that we've done, or we want to kind of, we feel guilty and we want to keep that inside. We want to hide it in the darkness, if you like. We don't want to say, look at me. Look at this bad thing that I've done. We want to hide it away. We want to hide it in the dark. And that's the first thing to say about Jesus saying, I am the light of the world. It means that we cannot hide from him. There's no hiding the things we do or the thoughts we have from Jesus. It's just not possible. He's the light of the world, bigger than a 75-foot times 4 pillar of light. He is the light, not just a light, but the light. And this means that he sees everything like shining a torch in the dark on something. You see it clearly. Jesus sees our actions. He knows what we're thinking. He knows what goes on in our hearts. King David wrote a psalm, a song in the Bible that says, even the darkness is daylight to you, O God. I am the light of the world means Jesus sees us and he knows us. That's one half of it. And that can feel uncomfortable, can't it? Because if we're feeling bad about something, if we're feeling guilty, if we're not happy about something we've done, the last thing we want to hear is that someone knows. But Jesus goes on, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. You see, Jesus doesn't shine a light on our darkness, show it up and then say, right, I've caught you out. I've got you. Now go away. No, he shines the light on us so that we realize we don't need to hide. And it frees us to follow him, to walk in the light. Just before these words in the Bible that Jess read for us, not wrote for us, that's elevating you a bit, but read for us. Thanks, Jess. the Bible teachers, the teachers of the law in the Bible, and the Pharisees bring a woman to Jesus. And they say she's a woman caught in adultery. She's caught out doing something bad, like having a light shone on her in the darkness. And what does Jesus say with all of these people around her, ready to throw stones at her as they would have done in those days? Let any one of you who is without sin, who's never done anything wrong, throw the first stone. That's what he says. He shines the torch, but not just on her, on everyone in the circle. And one by one, we would hear these thuds of stones as they're dropped and hit the ground, as each one of them realizes that the light shows that they've done wrong things too. Any one of you who's never done anything wrong, cast the first stone. And if we'd been there, we'd have dropped our stones too, wouldn't we? Because every one of us would have been shown up by Jesus' light. And yet, what does he say next to the woman? Has no one condemned you, he says. No one, sir, she replies. Then neither do I condemn you. Jesus says, now go and sin no more. Jesus doesn't want us to hide in the dark with all the wrong things that we do around us, getting away with them, hiding in the dark. No, he wants to show us. He wants to reveal us, to shine a light on that, to show us that we do wrong things, but not to condemn us, not to tell us off, not to punish us, but to free us from hiding those things in the dark so that we can live a life in the light, in his light, following him. That's what he means when he says, I am the light of the world. And he says that for all of us, any who would listen. So as we think about that, as you're drawing and writing things in your orders of service, we're going to hear a song now that reminds us of what following Jesus is and of what Jesus has done for us so that we can follow him. I'm going to invite the singers and the musicians up. Why not use this time as we hear this song, From Heaven You Came? Why not use the time to think about how you feel when you feel guilty? Maybe think about something that you're feeling bad about at the moment.
187.
If we're listening to this song, we can tell God about that in our heads. We can ask him to forgive us, and we can know that he does forgive us. We can think about how we feel when we're worried about something like that, and yet the relief when something like that is out in the open and sorted out. So let's think about that and pray as we hear this song.